When I entered the delivery room, I realized the doctor was my ex-husband. I clung to the nurse, begging her to knock me out immediately, but it seemed too late. "We've been divorced for less than a year, and you're already giving birth? Your new husband must be something else," he sneered, holding a scalpel, his eyes burning with rage as he glared at me. I pretended to faint, but my child wasn't cooperating. His tiny foot kicked hard against my belly, causing me to yell out in pain. "Damn it, Liam, get your son out of me right now." I had repeatedly told them not to send me to the city's central maternity hospital. A slight detour to Maria's maternity clinic would have done the trick, but the cab driver was too lazy to take the extra turn. He assured me that Dr. Lee at this hospital was excellent, his wife delivered here, and their baby was super healthy. Little did he know, Dr. Lee was my ex-husband. I still remembered how heartbroken Liam had been when we divorced. We were married for 2 years, but had no children. A medical check revealed that the issue was on his end. When my mom found out, she pressured me relentlessly to divorce him. "You're still young. Find someone who can have children and build a future," she insisted. I didn't fully agree. Though Liam and I met through an arranged date and started without much love, we had grown compatible over time. We worked well together, living separate lives, yet connected. Divorcing him felt irresponsible. But my mom was firm. "It's irresponsible for him to marry you knowing he has this issue." She even threatened her own health to force my hand, leaving me no choice but to ask for a divorce. That was the first time I saw Liam's perfectly groomed hair fall into disarray. His stubble grew out, his eyes bloodshot. He crouched in the corner, crying as he stared at my text. When I came home, he rushed to me, shaking my shoulders desperately. "Do we have to divorce? Is it really necessary?" I nodded, avoiding his gaze. "Can't we adopt? Or try IVF? Or I'll take more traditional medicine, anything, just don't leave me," he pleaded. I shook my head, feeling a hint of disdain. "You can't have kids. I can't let you hold me back. Let's just sign the papers." Thankfully, we haven't been married long, so there's not much to split. I started packing my bags, but somehow, our argument escalated into something else. One moment we were shouting, the next we were tangled in bed. He called it a divorce fling, saying he'd leave for good afterward. But I didn't expect to throw up on a dinner date with my new match just weeks later, big chunks of pork legs spilling across the table. My date was disgusted and left immediately. My mom, concerned, dragged me to the hospital, where I found out I was pregnant. Suddenly, my mom changed her tune, urging me to reconcile with Liam. But I was too embarrassed to face him. Leaving when he was at his lowest, only to come crawling back, felt shameful. Besides, I still remembered how intense that divorce fling was. It left me bedridden for 3 days before I could make it to the civil affairs office to finalize the paperwork. At the time, he smiled bitterly and wished me well. "I hope you find someone who can perform better than me," he said. And now here I was, back in his hands, giving birth to his child. Life really had a twisted sense of humor. After the delivery, I went straight home. On the 3rd day of my postpartum recovery, Liam showed up with a basket of fruit and bananas. "Leave it and go," I snapped. "You're not still hung up on me, are you?" I asked sharply. Though we were married for 2 years, it was more like roommates with benefits than a love story. When we divorced, I assumed his desperation was just wounded pride, not actual feelings. Now, though, I wondered if he wanted to reconcile. That wasn't happening. I wasn't about to go back to the same excrement pit, as the saying goes. "Not really," he said with a smirk. "I just wanted to see how your new husband outperformed me. Was it my technique or my speed that was lacking?" I rolled my eyes. "Where is your son's father? Playing cards? Drinking? Fishing?" Liam set the fruit down, peeled a banana, and started eating it himself. I rolled my eyes at him. "So apparently I'm not worthy of finding someone decent, huh?" "Not your business, Dr. Lee. You haven't given up on your annoying persistence, have you?" His face darkened immediately. Without a word, he threw a paternity test onto the bed. "Your kid's dad is probably busy eating bananas right now, don't you think? Don't you agree, Mom of the Year?" Seriously? He knew, yet he was still pretending? There was no need for me to explain. A single paternity test confirmed that this kid was Liam's. No need for extra words, just a mistake from that old doctor back then. Now that the three of us were here, we might as well have an honest conversation. I'm not someone who likes to procrastinate. Problems should be solved head-on. I turned to Liam. He was casually eating bananas, one after another, acting completely at home. Our son was lying on the bed, giggling away, blissfully unaware of the tense atmosphere. On the surface, it looked like a picture-perfect family. But hey, I'm not someone who goes back to my ex. Good horses don't graze on old pastures. Good dogs don't eat from the same dung pile twice. I glanced down at our son and nudged him. Kiddo, you've been in this world for almost a week now. It's not your first day. So, who do you want to stay with? If you choose me, I'll make sure you grow up with all the girls you can charm. But if you stay with the banana-eating monkey over there, who knows? Honestly, the only reason I married Liam back then was that his looks were passable. Over time, our habits sort of aligned. After we got married, he was busy with work and didn't have much time for me. It was fine since I'm practically allergic to romance and didn't demand much from him. But now, things are different. With a kid, you want the best for him, right? If I let Liam take care of him, the poor boy would be stuck eating hospital cafeteria food 3 times a day. I'd rather just order takeout myself. Just as I finished my speech, Liam let out a loud burp. Seizing the moment, I added, "See that, sweetheart? Even with all those bananas, he's still not full. If he gets desperate enough, he might even eat you someday." And just like that, as if he understood me, my son started wailing. I was secretly delighted. Perfect, that settles it. The kid stays with me, and the bananas are all his. I picked up my son and gently patted his back. But for some reason, the more I comforted him, the harder he cried. I glanced at Liam for help, only to see him pulling out his phone and typing something into a search engine. How to stop a newborn baby from crying. Unbelievable. I thought OBGYNs, of all people, would at least know how to calm a baby down. In the end, I had to call my mom for help. As for Liam's mother, I told him to keep this whole situation under wraps for now. After all, the two moms didn't exactly part on good terms. If they both showed up, I wouldn't be surprised if they split the baby in half right there. When my mom arrived, she immediately started fawning over Liam. Her intentions were clear. She wanted us to remarry. Liam sneered and closed the door behind him with a parting remark. "Why would I want your daughter back? After all, I'm young, capable, and in demand. Women lining up to have my kids could stretch all the way to France." My mom was so furious she couldn't even speak. I grabbed a pillow and hurled it at him, yelling, "Get lost." Then, I turned to console my mom, only for her to sigh dreamily. "Liam's gotten even more handsome since the divorce. Don't you think if you two had a daughter, she'd look just like a movie star?"
Mom.
She's a born opportunist. She doesn't care about saving face if it means getting what she wants. While I was fast asleep, she took my son and went straight to Liam's house to introduce the family. Liam's mom called me, furious, demanding that I come and take them back. So there I was, hailing a cab to their old neighborhood. I wasn't surprised to find the elevator broken. It's an old building, after all. Staring at the stairs, I felt a pang of despair. I'm healthy enough, but climbing all those stairs a month after giving birth? Still, the thought of Liam's mom's sharp tongue pushed me to grit my teeth and climb. Back then, it was my family's insistence that forced the divorce. Liam refused, but his mom, ever prideful, pressured him into signing the papers. She even said our families should cut ties entirely. Spitting at each other would be considered mercy. My mom, of course, didn't back down. The two of them argued fiercely, both convinced they were in the right. Our divorce was anything but peaceful. Now, my mom, worried I'd struggle to remarry with a kid, is trying to push me back into Liam's arms. She's even offering to throw in tens of thousands for our son's future preschool fees, whatever it takes for Liam to agree to remarry. With the last bit of strength I had left, I climbed to the 6th floor. The first thing I saw was my mom holding my son, persistently trying to get Liam's mom to take a look at him. But Liam's mom didn't even glance, her face full of disdain. Honestly, she was the first grandmother I'd ever met who didn't like her own grandson. As I stepped through the door, My mom called me over to apologize. Grace, hurry and come apologize to your mother-in-law. My mom kept beckoning me while putting on her best smile for Liam's mom. Oh, in-laws, the kids aren't young anymore, and now that the child's here, let's just treat the past as a joke and move on. We, as parents, only want the best for our kids, right? Back then, I was in a tough spot. I couldn't possibly live my whole life without holding my grandson, could I? Don't you agree? Liam's mom's expression darkened further, and the words out of her mouth weren't much kinder. She took 2 steps back, pointing at both me and my mom as she started to berate us. Oh, so your child is a child, but mine isn't? My son was so upset by your daughter that he couldn't eat or sleep for days. She humiliated him completely. And now you want to come and go as you please? Do you really think my son is that easy to bully? It's already generous of us to have delivered your grandson safely. You want them to remarry? Over my dead body. My son has women lined up from here to France, waiting to marry him. You two should go find someone else or raise your child on your own, because we're not taking care of this grandson. What kind of mother raises this kind of daughter? Who knows? Maybe your grandson inherited your family's shamelessness too. We can't afford to raise him. My mom, standing there like a tiny, insignificant insect, endured the scolding while still smiling and apologizing. Oh, come on, in-laws, that's going too far. It was my fault for forcing Grace to divorce. My daughter's personality is actually great. It's all my doing. Please just give her another chance. I stared at my mom in disbelief. No matter how desperate she was to marry me off, wasn't this a bit too much? They were literally yelling in her face. I stepped forward and pulled my mom toward the door. This was too humiliating. Yet my mom kept apologizing as I dragged her out. I was too angry to speak, so I just flagged down a cab without a word. In the car, my mom kept muttering under her breath. By the time we got home, I couldn't hold it in anymore. I shouted at her. Is this really necessary? I'm not some hopeless case. Divorce moms are everywhere these days, and I can raise my son just fine on my own. Why do I have to be this pathetic? My mom placed the baby in the bedroom and pulled me to sit on the couch. She spoke at length, her words full of heartfelt pain. She said, "When someone calls your child a bastard, can you argue back?" She said, "When your child asks you, why do other kids have dads and I don't? Can you answer him?" She said, "How many men are willing to accept a woman with someone else's child and spend their whole life together? How many can you find?" I knew every word she said came from her own experience. My mom raised me on her own, and I'd never met my dad. What I had seen growing up were countless blind dates with my mom holding my hand, all ending badly. I was speechless as I watched tears fall from her eyes, drop by drop, helpless. Mom, everything you said is true. But don't you know? I just want to live a good life. Do you think that after everything that's happened, if Liam and I remarry, we'll actually be happy? She looked at me, her lips parting slightly. No, but it will be easier. I shook my head. Mom, how could it ever be easier? Liam and I didn't marry out of love in the first place. We only ended up together because of our parents. After everything that's happened, how could we reconcile and move forward? I'd rather start over with someone else than go back to Liam. I told my mom to give me some time. I'd eventually meet someone suitable. Maybe he'd be divorced. Maybe he'd be over 40. Maybe he'd have kids of his own. Either way, someone would be willing to take on this mess of mine. My mom wanted me to be happy, but I couldn't wait for that, so I packed my schedule full of blind dates. Unsurprisingly, after the matchmakers heard my situation, the quality of candidates dropped a few levels. Looking at the man in front of me, who only had a few strands of hair left, I felt a wave of nausea. "I have a son," I said bluntly. He smiled and nodded. "I know. I have one too. I have a job, a house, and a decent income. I just want a dad for my child, just a dad, nothing more." I was direct. I knew most people coming to blind dates weren't looking for love anyway. He smiled again, this time in a way that sent chills down my spine. "That's perfect. I think I'm very suitable." Then he added, "Maybe later we can start bonding with each other's kids." "So soon?" I was startled. "How old is your son?" I asked. 30, he replied. What the heck, his son was 30. That meant he must be close to 50. I shook my head repeatedly. The age gap was too much for me to handle. I quickly tried to end the date. As I was about to leave, I suddenly felt something touch my leg. Looking down, I saw a man crawling on the floor. Terrified, I screamed and jumped up. "Ah! Who are you?" The man on the ground gave me a goofy grin. "Mommy, mommy, I'm your little baby." He kept crawling toward me, clinging to my leg. I dodged him frantically and shouted for his dad to step in. Turning my head to look at his father, I saw him leisurely sipping coffee. "Let them bond. What's the big deal?" he said casually. I wanted to yank out those few remaining hairs on his head. What kind of crazy person is this? But before I could do anything, the man clinging to me continued his inappropriate advances. Despite his silly, clumsy demeanor, he was surprisingly strong. As he reached toward my chest, I found myself powerless to stop him. The cafe, owned by the older man, had already been cleared of all staff. Despair began to sink in when, suddenly, I spotted Liam, dressed in a white coat. "Get your filthy hands off her," he shouted. The man was immediately kicked off me. Liam didn't stop there. He delivered kick after kick to the man. I'd never seen someone fight while wearing a lab coat before. And honestly, it looked kind of cool. Liam grabbed my hand and pulled me toward the door. As we passed my date, I paused. Liam's attractive brows furrowed. "What? Still want to chat with him?" He said it as though I was an idiot. I rolled my eyes in response, reached out, and yanked the toupee off the man's head. Ah! My God, it was real hair. As we got into his car, Liam's face was stormy. He took the driver's seat and, after a moment of silence, asked coldly, "So you're in such a rush to find someone to be your son's dad?" I stayed quiet. His question hit too close to home. "I mean," he continued, "aren't you still entertaining that French admirer of yours? Seems like you're in a hurry too." Liam glanced at me sideways, as if questioning my intelligence. "You went to my house?" "Yeah," I replied, guessing his mother had already complained to him. I hurried to clarify, "But I didn't bully your mom or ask for any child support." "How'd you even get up there?" Liam ignored my explanation and switched topics. "The stairs, obviously. How else? Don't you know what kind of neighborhood your family lives in?" For some reason, his glance softened. A flicker of pity appeared in his eyes. "Let the two old women argue. Why are you getting involved? You're not some 70-year-old, are you?" I shook my head. "You sure are chatty today. What exactly are you trying to say?" I snapped. "I'm saying, I don't trust anyone else to raise my son. Are you?" Before he could finish, I interrupted him loudly. "What the hell? Are you trying to take my son away from me?" "No way. Absolutely not. You think one night with me gives you the right to take the child I carried for 10 months? Over my dead body. Stop the car. Stop the car. Pull over right now." When we got back to my place, my mom and son were already asleep. The night was peaceful. After reheating the soup my mom had made, I headed out for my next date. I didn't expect to run into Liam again. He parked his car outside my building, arms crossed as he leaned against it. His hair was neatly styled, and he looked sharp, almost like he was heading to a date himself. I walked past him, trying to hail a cab. No way was I letting him get to me. What if he tried to steal my son while I wasn't looking? "Stop right there," Liam called out. I ignored him and quickened my pace. "Grace, if you don't stop, I'll head upstairs," he threatened. Damn it, he won. Liam was, in fact, going on a date. His mom had set him up with the daughter of a friend, a girl who'd just returned from France. Apparently, she'd liked him since childhood and had rushed to contact his mom right after graduation. She didn't even mind that he'd been divorced. She'd landed in town and gone straight to the cafe. Meanwhile, my date texted me, saying he was stuck in traffic and would be late. I decided to wait for him inside the cafe, but to my dismay, the only available table was a 4-seater. Before I could refuse, Liam dragged me to sit across from the French girl. With impeccable manners, he introduced me. "Sophia, this is my ex-wife. I hope you don't mind." "Mind? Who wouldn't? This wasn't Liam's first date, but I couldn't believe he'd actually say something like that. To my surprise, the French girl wasn't exactly innocent either. Oh, it's my former sister-in-law. You've really had it tough these past 2 years, huh? Your complexion doesn't look great. She turned to Liam, her tone teasing. Brother, you're so busy with work, you didn't even take care of your ex. Look at her. She doesn't even look 40 anymore. She's practically aged into my mom's generation. She smiled sweetly. Brother, you better not treat me like that in the future. I'm 28. Don't get mad, I told myself. No one would compensate me if I burst a vein. Suppressing my rage, I took a big gulp of coffee. Then, with a pft, the coffee sprayed all over the French girl's face. Why does this coffee smell so, hot? Did it burn you? I hope you're okay. I asked mockingly, while pulling out a tissue to dab at her face. Of course, I did it on purpose. As if I'd let some brat throw shade at me? I'd already noticed her pockmarked face. Getting coffee on it might help remove some layers. No worries, no worries. You sit down, sis. I'll go freshen up in the restroom, she said, waving it off while swaying her hips away. After all, your brain's still recovering post-birth, so it's understandable. Damn, did I just lose this round? Liam, engrossed in the documents on his phone, had barely noticed what just happened. He only caught the part where I sprayed Sophia with coffee. He opened his mouth to speak, but I cut him off. You told me to sit down. She provoked me first. Don't even think about playing the knight in shining armor for your little green tea princess. Or else, I'll spray you next. I glanced at the remaining coffee on the table to emphasize my threat. Liam calmly picked up a tissue and reached out, wiping the coffee from my lips and the stain on my chest. Wow, not the brightest bulb in the box, huh? Spraying others and ending up covered yourself, he quipped. Are you sure I can trust you with our son? What did he mean by that? Was he trying to subtly angle for custody again? I shoved his hand away and bolted to the restroom because, well, I was leaking. I had deliberately worn dark clothes, but Liam got too close and clearly noticed. His panicked gaze darted everywhere but at me, and his hand awkwardly brushed at the coffee on my shirt. The scene was unbearably awkward. While I escaped to the restroom, I bumped into my blind date. Oh, you're still recovering? His gaze darted uncomfortably, avoiding direct eye contact. I nodded. Well, maybe we can reschedule, he stammered, clearly uncomfortable. I nodded again, knowing full well that next time would never come. His expression screamed that we were done here. And honestly, I didn't blame him. This wasn't anyone's fault. It's just how things go. Sophia dragged me back to the table, insisting I bear witness to their date. What an absolute joke. Having an ex-wife as a witness? That's a new one. Reluctantly, I sat back down and busied myself devouring mini cakes. Honestly, I was starving. All I'd had that day was some chicken soup my mom made. Now, I couldn't resist the temptation of these cakes. Wow, sis, you really love sweets. But Liam's not a fan, right? He can't even handle a little sweetness, Sophia chirped with fake innocence. I nodded, remembering how Liam once barely tolerated a bite of a dessert I brought home, then gulped down half a bottle of water to wash it down. After that, I stopped stocking sweets in the fridge. Seeing him sickened by them only sickened me in return. But I'm just the right level of sweetness for Liam. Sweet but not overwhelming, don't you think, Liam? She said, resting her chin in her hands, her voice dripping with sugar. Ugh, she's really hitting me with cheesy pickup lines? Please. I may not be great at it, but come on. Liam glanced at me briefly, then gave a heavy, in response to her question. Why was he looking at me while answering her? Whatever. I rolled my eyes and continued devouring the cakes. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Liam's lips curl into a small smile before quickly returning to his usual expression. Then, my plate of mini cakes was unceremoniously whisked away. What the hell? You've had enough. Any more, and you'll upset your stomach, Liam said, motioning for the waiter to take the cakes away. He then returned to scrolling through his phone. Fine, no more cakes. I pulled out my phone to play a game. Time's up. Too much screen time is bad for your eyes. Liam said, snatching my phone and slipping it into his pocket. I was speechless. Ex-husband, this is your date. If I'm not here playing the third wheel, what am I even doing? I glared at him, and my gaze accidentally fell on his screen. The titles of the articles he had been reading popped out at me. Postpartum body care for women. Mood management for women after childbirth. Healthy eating tips for new mothers. Is it okay to eat 5 mini cakes after giving birth? What the hell was he researching? Liam noticed my glance, panicked, and quickly locked his phone. Sophia broke the awkward silence. There's a new, hot pot place, or no, a boutique nearby. Why don't you come shopping with us, sis? What new scheme was she cooking up? I declined immediately. No thanks. I have to get home to my child. You too, the long-lost siblings, can enjoy your bonding time, I said, leaving the cafe without a backward glance. The moment I stepped outside, Liam caught up with me. I'll drive you. I waved him off. I've already called a cab. I'm giving you 2 space to enjoy your lovely date. Aside from being a bit of a snake, she's not half bad. Wishing you both everlasting happiness. Not waiting for his reply, I got into the cab. Men really do get more desirable after a divorce. Unbelievable. As the cab pulled up to my apartment complex, I realized something horrifying. My phone was still in Liam's pocket. Ugh, they say new moms lose their minds for 3 years, and I guess they're right. I borrowed the driver's phone and called Liam. Hello, it's me, Grace. My phone is... Before I could finish, Liam interrupted. I know. I'm at a red light. Almost there. Stay in the car. It's hot outside. Then he hung up. Wait, since when is he this considerate? I handed the phone back to the driver and leaned back in the car to close my eyes. Barely 5 minutes passed before Liam came rushing over, drenched in sweat. He knocked on the window by my side, and the driver grinned knowingly. Miss, you've got yourself a good husband there. Running out in this heat just to return your phone. I glanced at Liam's sweat-covered face and replied, he's a great husband, but not mine. I got out of the car while Liam stayed to pay the fare. On the way back to the apartment, I walked ahead while he followed a few steps behind. Neither of us spoke, but I could feel his hesitation. He clearly wanted to say something, but couldn't find the words. When we got to the building entrance, I stopped. If you've got something to say, just say it, I said. If he dared to bring up custody, I was ready to slap him right here and now. Liam scratched his head awkwardly. I was thinking, slap. So, he was going to talk about taking the baby. Before he could finish, I slapped him across the face. He looked at me, stunned, one hand covering his cheek. You hit me? He asked incredulously. Does your hand hurt? His angry tone softened instantly into concern. I rolled my eyes. He was trying to play nice now? As if I'd fall for that. Not when it came to my child. I turned and headed upstairs without another word. The moment I reached the door, I could hear the baby crying loudly from inside. My hands fumbled with the keys, nervous and trembling. Ever since becoming a mom, the sound of my baby crying felt like someone wringing my heart. I tried the lock 2 or 3 times before finally opening the door. The sight that greeted me froze me in my tracks. Mom? Mom? I rushed to her side, shaking her gently. Mom, wake up. What happened? Why did you suddenly faint? She didn't respond. My baby was wailing in the corner. Panicked, I grabbed my phone and dialed. Liam, come upstairs. My mom, she's not breathing. Liam, hurry. I held my mom's hand, tears streaming down uncontrollably. It was so sudden. Just this morning, she had told me to dress nicely for my blind date. How could this happen now? The cancer was already at an advanced stage. I recommended hospitalization over a year ago, but she refused. She managed with medication for a year, which is quite remarkable given her condition, the doctor explained. You're telling me no one in your family noticed she was this sick? You didn't realize how much weight she lost? A year ago, she was a plump, lively lady. Now she's barely a shadow of that. The doctor's words echoed in my mind as I sat in the hospital hallway, numb and overwhelmed. Every memory of my mom flooded back, her laughing, holding my hand, and scolding me. All of it played on a loop, stabbing at my heart. After 2 days of crying and exhaustion, I woke up weak and disoriented. Liam's mom was by the window, cradling the baby. There, little one. Sleep tight, grow strong, she cooed softly. Mrs. Moore, what brings you here? I asked weakly. She turned around with a warm smile. Look at this little guy. So chubby and cute, just like Liam when he was a baby. I managed a faint smile. My mom had said the same thing, that the baby looked just like me when I was little. But now, no one would remember what I looked like as a child. Yeah, he is, I replied quietly.
Such a handful, though.
Your mom must have gone through so much raising you, she said. Her words brought fresh tears to my eyes. A little while later, Liam walked in carrying food. How is she? He asked his mom softly. She woke up for a bit, but went back to sleep. She's grieving. Give her time, she replied just as quietly. Mrs. Moore handed the baby to Liam and left, saying she'd check back later. Liam walked over to the window, rocking the baby gently. His expression was calm, almost peaceful, as he hummed a lullaby. For a moment, watching him like that, I thought my mom would have been comforted to see this scene, to see her grandchild so loved. Before I knew it, Liam was beside me, holding my hand. Grace, I've taken care of everything for your mom. When you're feeling better, I'll take you to visit her, he said softly. You're not to blame for not knowing. If she didn't tell you, she must have had her reasons. I nodded weakly. That was just like my mom, always strong, always hiding her pain. When I got sick, I was given all sorts of medicine and supplements. When she got sick, all she had was a few days of warm water. Her hiding things from me wasn't anything new, but what hurt was that I hadn't noticed for an entire year. What was I even doing during that year? Liam continued. After leaving your house, your mom came to me. I was probably the first person she told about her illness. She asked me for one thing: to take good care of you, whether as a husband or a friend. It didn't matter what title I used, as long as I took care of you. I was too prideful to agree right away, so she came to my house and got into an argument with my mom. I'm sorry about that. He glanced at me. I shook my head. It's not your fault. You didn't do anything wrong. She apologized to me, he went on. She said the divorce was her idea because she was afraid we wouldn't last without children. Knowing her time was running out, she pushed you to leave me. I understand her reasoning, but I can't accept it. When I married you, I planned to spend my whole life with you. Having kids is a bonus. Without them, it's just the two of us. Kids aren't a burden, they're love. You don't have many friends, and he hesitated. What do you think about us getting remarried? Liam's words were nervous, stumbling. I glanced at him, unsure how I felt, but his presence was reassuring. Let's wait a bit, I said. My mom just passed. When I was well enough to leave the hospital, Liam took me home. The moment I opened the door, I thought my mom had come back. I called out, Mom. But when I turned around, I saw it was Liam's mom. She looked startled, then murmured an acknowledgement before continuing with what she was doing. I took the baby into the bedroom, planning to settle him before returning. Liam followed me in. You don't take care of yourself well. My mom doesn't have much to do at home, so I asked her to stay here. I've arranged to switch to day shifts this month. During the day, my mom will be here. Just let her know what you want to eat or do. I'll be here at night. If you need anything or feel unwell, just call for me. I'll come right over from next door. Don't worry, I'm here. He helped me settle the baby, then led me to the living room. My mom was gone, but Liam's mom was here. She told me to treat her like my own mother. She made nourishing soups every day, sewed little clothes for the baby, and even brought over her friends to chat, trying to keep me from dwelling on sadness. At night, Liam waited until I fell asleep before going back to his room, but I started suffering from insomnia. When I couldn't sleep, he sat by my bedside and told me funny stories from the hospital. But how many funny stories could there really be? Most of them were about life and death, and his stories often trailed off mid-sentence, leaving me to imagine the unhappy endings. Then, he'd switch topics or read from novels. One night, I woke up after falling asleep briefly. Unable to sleep again, I searched for a box of sleeping pills I had bought a long time ago. As I poured out some pills and prepared to take them with water, the glass was suddenly snatched from my hand. The pills scattered on the floor. I looked at Liam in shock. His expression was one of pure panic, as if he'd just seen death itself. "What are you doing?" Liam asked through clenched teeth. I tried to explain, but he cut me off. "What are you doing? Don't do this, okay?
Don't.
Do you have any idea what that year without you was like for me? You just left without thinking about how I'd feel. I threw myself into work, into the hospital, trying not to think about you. I kept going because I knew you were still out there, breathing, existing. That's how I survived. Otherwise, do you think I earned all those awards and titles at such a young age because of luck? And now you want to leave this world?
What about me?
What about me if you're gone? How am I supposed to live? Grace, don't be so selfish. Think about me, or at least think about our son. He's so young, are you going to leave him too?" As Liam spoke, he sank to the floor, sobbing uncontrollably. I knelt beside him and held him tightly. "I can't sleep. I can't sleep. Hold me, Liam.
Hold me.
I miss my mom." His trembling body held my equally trembling one. On the day of my mom's funeral, there weren't many people there. After all, it was always just the two of us. She only had me and I only had her. I hadn't seen any relatives since I was a child, so there was no one to notify. Liam brought his entire family. He knew I loved lively gatherings, and he knew my mom did too. Following Liam's mom came Sophia, the sweet French girl Liam was set up with for a blind date. Liam's mom explained it to me when he was at work. Sophia was a match Liam's mom had arranged, saying, "What parent wouldn't want to see their child happily married?" So, she took it upon herself to organize the date. However, as it turned out, Sophia already had a French boyfriend. She agreed to the blind date because Liam had orchestrated the entire thing to spite me for going on dates with other men. After realizing this, Liam's mom scolded him, calling him petty. I laughed and agreed. He really is. Liam, however, pulled me into a tight embrace and teased, "If I'm petty, what does that make you? How many dates have you gone on this past year?" I started counting on my fingers, then held up my palm. "5, he asked, frowning. I shook my head. 50. Liam's mom gasped and slapped her thigh in surprise. "Goodness gracious, this daughter-in-law. You're something else." After the funeral, I lay on my mom's bed for a long time, holding the phone I'd bought her years ago. I turned it on and stumbled upon a video. It was hours long. The first 5 or 6 minutes were just my mom fiddling with the camera, turning it around and pressing buttons. Then, at the 7-minute mark, her face finally appeared on screen, so gaunt and frail, her cheeks hollowed and her hair streaked with white. I covered my mouth, tears streaming uncontrollably as I watched her speak to the camera. "Grace, you barely touched the chicken soup at lunch. Did I put too much salt again? Oh, I'm getting old. These hands just don't listen to me anymore." She paused and sighed. "By the way, I saw you rushing out this morning. You forgot to bring the breast pump, didn't you? If it overflows while you're out, it'll be so embarrassing. You're so careless, Grace." She smiled faintly, then her expression softened. "You know, if Liam were still around, things would be different. He's so attentive. When you were together, he managed to put some weight on you. Your face even got rounder. You laughed more often, too." Her smile faded as she continued. "Speaking of Liam, Grace, I owe him an apology. If I could go back in time, I'd probably still make the same choices. I know I'm selfish, but I just wanted you to have an easier life. If that means being the bad guy, then so be it." She took a deep breath, her voice trembling. "Grace, I know you didn't love him that much. I know you've never truly loved anyone. Whether it was marriage or those blind dates, it was all just to put my mind at ease. I'm sorry for that, Grace. You've worked so hard for us. You bought a car, a house, and all those health supplements I couldn't even understand. But all I've ever wanted is for you to be happy, even just a little bit happy. At least happier than I was." She paused, wincing as if in pain, then continued. "Grace, I'm sure you think I'm terrible for forcing you to marry, then forcing you to divorce, and now suggesting you reconcile. I've never considered your feelings. But if it means your life will be less difficult in the future, then I'll bear the blame. There's no such thing as an unselfish mother. All I want is for someone reliable to stay by your side, so I can leave this world in peace. Her voice grew weaker. In the next life, I want to be your mom again. I feel like I haven't given you enough love in this life. Maybe I can make up for it next time. Grace, please just talk to Liam. Or, if you could, maybe even beg him. Show a little vulnerability. Whatever conditions his family has, just agree to them. Please, Grace. I'm so afraid. I'm terrified of leaving you and my grandson alone in this world. You don't know how much I've worried. Her voice trailed off, replaced by the sound of my son crying in the background. The screen went dark, and I heard my mother's voice one last time. Oh, my sweet grandson, are you crying again? Do you miss your mom? Mommy's gone to find Daddy. Then there was a loud crash, and her voice was gone. All that remained was the sound of my son's lonely cries. The video played on for hours, but my mom only appeared for about 20 minutes. I watched it over and over until Liam walked in and met my tearful gaze. He panicked suddenly, placing the bowl of soup onto the nearby table and hurrying toward me. What's wrong? What's wrong? Don't cry. Your eyes will start hurting, he said anxiously. Through my sobs, I choked out, Liam, the soup, it's too salty. Too salty? Salter than tears. Liam pulled me into his arms, patting my back gently. It's okay. Then don't drink it. What do you want instead? I'll make it for you. I looked up and met his eyes. I don't deserve you being so good to me. Maybe you should think it over again. His eyes turned red, just like that night when I asked for a divorce. I do. Grace, don't ever say that again. In this lifetime, I only want you. No one else will do. So, what if you don't love me that much? I'll try harder. Even if it's just to fulfill your mom's last wish, please stay with me. Let's make it work, okay? Grace, please. Don't leave me again. Once was enough. I don't want to live like that anymore. You don't know how many times I felt the impulse to tie you up and keep you locked away like in some movie, just to have you with me forever. But I couldn't. I never knew Liam felt so strongly about me. I'd always thought we were the same, just going through the motions of marriage to appease our parents. But honestly, if I were to rank the people who mattered most to me, my mom would come first. Liam would come second. How could he not be important? It's just that in front of my mom, his significance seemed smaller. I touched his earlobe gently. Then let's make it work. I'll try really. He hugged me tightly. Okay. I murmured, I'm sorry for making you suffer. Mom, look. Have I fulfilled your wish now? I finally have a family of my own. And as you said, we'll have a few beautiful daughters. Ones who look like movie stars. Liam's side story. My name is Liam. My mom wanted me to be a renowned doctor. My dad wanted me to be a happy child. Later, they disagreed and separated. I became a doctor, but I'm not famous. And I'm not particularly happy either. The day I met Grace for a blind date, I had just finished a night shift at the hospital. I was a mess, didn't wash my face, my hair was disheveled, and there were even remnants of sleep in the corners of my eyes. The person who arranged the date said the woman was in a hurry and couldn't give me time to clean up. I thought, whatever, it's just the first blind date. The chances of it working out are slim anyway. Besides, I don't even want to get married. I'm just doing this to appease my mom. When I got there, she was sitting in the coffee shop, a computer in front of her, surrounded by documents. It was quite a mess. I sat down and quietly watched her. She didn't have time to talk. She seemed busy. I studied her carefully. She looked completely ordinary. Her eyes weren't particularly charming, her nose wasn't prominent, and her figure wasn't extraordinary. There were even some small moles around her nose. Her long hair was casually tied into a messy ponytail with a red elastic band. She wore a black outfit, loose but neat. But for some reason, I couldn't take my eyes off her. It was as though she had some kind of aura that attracted me. After about 10 minutes, she spoke. Hello, I'm Grace. I want to settle down. I have a car, a house, and a company. The company's revenue is stable, and I make about $500,000 a year. I looked at your profile, and it seems fine. Being a doctor is such a good profession. What do you think of me? Well, I can be a bit indecisive sometimes. Otherwise, I wouldn't have spent all this time not knowing if I actually liked being a doctor. But her directness and clear self-awareness made me envious. I paused and nodded. She continued, "We can talk about feelings later, but I'm pretty busy. I don't have time for mother-in-law issues or neighborhood disputes. I'm probably not cut out to be a perfect housewife, but don't worry, I won't cause you any trouble. I'm adaptable." "It's okay. I can handle it," I replied. Then we started dating. The first time was at the hospital cafeteria, where we had braised ribs. She really liked it and said it was better than what her mom made. Then we kissed in the car in the basement. The second time was in the hospital's Western cafeteria, where we had spicy chicken. She liked it a little bit but said it wasn't as good as the place on Wood Street. We kissed again, this time for a long time, downstairs by her apartment. The third time was at a new window in the hospital, where we had pizza and hamburgers. She didn't like it, saying she had never liked them since childhood. I asked why. She said, "Because eating this reminds me of looking for my dad." I didn't understand. What does pizza have to do with looking for her dad? She explained, "When I was little, I saw a lot of one-time dads in the pizza shop. But in the end, they all left, and I was the one who ate all the fillings from 3 hamburgers." She came from a single-parent family, and I knew that from the start. So, growing up, she must have had her share of difficulties. I was about to comfort her when she suddenly looked up and said, "By the way, Liam, do you have shares in the hospital cafeteria?" I shook my head.
No.
"Then why don't you change places next time? The food here smells like disinfectant." I felt embarrassed and quickly nodded. Sorry. Then she suddenly laughed, grabbed my hand, and ran toward the basement. In the car, we made love. Later, we got our marriage certificate. We'd been together for about half a year. After we got married, she was indeed very busy, and I worked alternating shifts. We often didn't see each other, but she tried to make me breakfast before going to work, and at night, she'd throw our clothes in the laundry. She did some of the little things a wife should do. There were no issues with my mom or neighbors. In fact, I handled those relationships, but in reality, it was all her. Fixing the blocked drains, changing broken light bulbs, and taking care of neighborly contributions. Her mom often came over to clean and cook, which saved me from eating hospital cafeteria food. Honestly, I felt like I had fulfilled my dad's wish. I was a happy kid. But one day, I wasn't happy anymore. I felt like the world was falling apart. The words on my phone shattered my happiness. Why can't I? Why can't I give her a child? But why does that mean we have to divorce? I could tell that Grace's feelings for me had faded, but at least she had some feelings for me. After all, she wouldn't have tried to wash my personal clothes if she didn't care. Yet, the word divorce came out of her mouth so easily. I couldn't make her change her mind. Apologies didn't work. Begging didn't work. The divorce was inevitable. I loved her, but at that moment, I hated her. That night, I went crazy. She cried, but I pretended not to hear, just hating myself for being useless. After it was over, I didn't speak to her again. 3 days later, we went to the Civil Affairs Bureau and got divorced. Later, I fulfilled my mom's wish. I became a famous doctor. But in the process, I accidentally lost my dad's wish. I didn't expect Grace to end up on the list of mothers. She was rushed to the delivery room by an ambulance. I asked around and learned that, even in labor, she was still out negotiating deals, running around the city with a big belly. I was furious. How could her new husband let her keep working when she was about to give birth? I changed my clothes and went straight to the delivery room. She was still the same, ordinary yet tough. My emotions surged. The person I had dreamed of for so many nights suddenly appeared before me. I wanted to say, "Long time no see," but my words betrayed me, turning into something else that made her angry. After the delivery, a thought popped into my head. "Hurry up and pull your son out of her." I froze. My son? I quickly had a paternity test done. Sure enough, he was mine. I actually wanted to remarry her. But my words got the better of me. That visit wasn't very pleasant. Her mom was sick. She wanted us to remarry. Honestly, I was secretly pleased, but when I thought about how her mom had forced me to divorce her, I didn't agree right away. When her mom passed away, Grace cried on the phone, gasping for breath. I regretted not telling her about her mom's illness earlier. At least they could have had a proper goodbye. Grace seemed to collapse. It felt like when I was abandoned by her. She was left hollow like I was at that time. My mom liked Grace. She never caused trouble or fought for my attention. Even when she was busy, she'd take time to chat with Grace once a week. Their personalities clicked. But because of her mom's actions, Grace had some negative feelings about me. So, remarrying wasn't an option with my mom. Later, Grace found out about her mom's death. When she arrived at the hospital, her eyes were red. She said she never expected such a thing to happen, and she was so distressed that she almost collapsed at the hospital. Eventually, the matter of remarriage was naturally resolved. I had met other women, but the one I truly loved was always Grace. She hurt me, she didn't love me, but as long as she was willing to be with me, that's all that mattered.